Hi, I recorded As Time Goes By not so long ago, and the style I played was slow stride piano. It is a lovely jazz style that many people enjoy, but how do you play like that? Let's break it down now and make sure that you stay until the end, where I'm gonna reveal a little fun fact. So now let's speak about how to play slow stride piano. It's a very fun style, I think. And before we begin, you should know that I've divided now the exercise into easy, medium and hard, depending on your skill level and expertise, right? And you can download the PDF file for that down below. Now let's speak about the big picture first, and the arrangement I used when I played As Time Goes By for you. Some of it was rehearsed. Still, it included a lot of elements of improvisation, and the bass solo I had, where I played sort of like a bass solo, just like this, right? That was completely improvised. And the secret to do all of this is to get to know the elements well. Of course, you have to know what to do with the left hand and the right hand, but you also need to know the four core elements, which are rhythm, harmony, melody, and dynamics. So you need to keep that in mind all the time as you play. The left hand, let's speak about that now. It's jumping a lot. So when you play stride piano, you are jumping from left to right and back and forth like this. So one bass note and then the chord. If that's the F chord, you just jump back and forth like that with your left hand. And the left hand now plays on 1 and 3, right? You play the root only. That's one way of doing it, right? That's now an F. And if I'm going to make it as an F7, now let's do that. You can play the root plus the 7th, and you can also go down to the 5th, right? So now I went down to the 5th from F. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5th. And you can also play the root plus the 10th. But I would not do that down here, it's too dark. At least I think so. And you can play the root plus the 7th or the 5th and the 10th. Again, you can play with the root plus the 5th or the 7th like this. These chords I'm using now is something called shell chords, and I made a video about that in the past, so you can check that out as well. There are a lot of tenths now. So a tenth is the interval from F to A, and you're supposed to do that with just your left hand. And a lot of people, they cannot reach the 10th. That's a common problem. And if you cannot reach the 10th, there are two ways you can fix that. The traditional way is to do it like this guy on the screen. He cannot reach the 10th because it's too far away. So if you cannot reach the 10th on your piano, you have to jump. It sounds a little bit different, but that's what you gotta do. Or there's a second option. This is the other way you can do it, and this is what I've done, and that is to bring the 10th closer to you. I made a special video about that, so you can check that out if you're interested. So that's the shell chords. Now let's speak about what you play on the second and fourth beats, right? So you play chords, as I said, but you can play A and B voicings, and A voicing is like this. If I now play an F minor 7, I could do it like that. So 1, and then the second beat. This is now an A voicing of an F minor 7. A B voicing would look like this. I teach all about this in the very first lessons of the Jazz Piano Step course, in case you're interested. There are old-fashioned chords too that you use very often when you play slow stride piano, and this is one example. So old-fashioned jazz chords usually were with 6th, like I play now. So this is an E flat 6th, like that. So that's what the left hand is doing, and you do that in combination with voice leading and passing chords. So if you're going to land on an F minor 7, you can go up a half step before that. And the next chord, for example, B flat 7. Now you can go a half step above there as well. Those are more like voice leading or passing chords, which I like to call it. And also when you play slow stride piano, there are a lot of dim chords. So here's an exercise for that. This is how to learn the dim voicing. So let me just speak about the dim chord first. So if you play a dim 7, diminished 7, right? So now what you do is that you play up like this instead. So now you skip this note and transpose this up a whole octave, right? Like that. And you play it down here, and then you jump up a minor 3rd step. So you play through like this, through the dim 7th chords like this. And of course you need to do that through all of the 3 variants of dim 7th chord. So the next one would be up a half step, right? So if this was the first, then you start here next time and go through as you see on the screen. The same voicing you can use as a dominant 7th, for example, a C7 with G in the bass. So if you play a C7 and then you play the G in the bass like this, it's the same voicing as this, right? Or you can play a minor 6 chord, for example, a G minor 6. Now this is a G minor 6, so here's the minor. And there's the 6th. So I like to use this voicing a lot when I play slow stride piano style. Now let's speak about developing your flexibility with your left hand. And assuming you know the tune as time goes by, this is what I do, and I've done it a lot, is to play the tune only using the left hand. So now you should pretend that your right hand is on a vacation, like you see on the screen. This is an AI generated image, by the way. And then what you do, you have to work with your left hand only, and you have to do that a lot for a long time. And now the goal is not to sound very good, but to develop your flexibility for your left hand. Then you stop when you find something interesting, but let me show you how that would look like. So now, if I want to play As Time Goes By, I would do that only with my left hand. When you do this, it's not sounding so rich compared to what you would do with both of your hands. But now, as I said, you should stop when you find something interesting. For example, when you go to this place in the tune As Time Goes By, then you can use the diminished 7th chord I've just shown you. So for example, here you can use this diminished trick. And you would not know that if you didn't do the exercises first. So that's where I recommend that you start, so that you can find new patterns when you arrange this for yourself. And by the way, when your right hand comes home from vacation, it's going to sound a lot more rich. So now it's going to sound more like this, and it's very satisfying. And I will teach you a lot of tricks for what you can do with your right hand, so stay tuned for that. Now let's speak a little bit more about the left hand, and we will speak more about stride elements. And before I show you the examples, I explained last time a tip where you go all in. The idea is that you're going to test the elements and tips and tricks, but you have to do it a lot. And that means if you learn something new, try to apply it everywhere in the tune, in whatever tune you're working on, for example, As Time Goes By. So specifically, let's have a look now at type 1. This is the first thing that you can do with your left hand. And by the way, this is now written in 12/8 because it's swing. So it's easier to read if it's written in 12/8. So the first thing to do is to anticipate the next chord. So if the chord is an F minor 7, you can play that like this, and then play the chord, for example, like this. And now you're anticipating the next chord, which is a B flat 7 in this case. And as I said, you should go all in on whatever you're doing. So now try to apply this everywhere in the tune. Following the chord changes of the tune, of course. Now, let's have a look at the second type, and this is where you're anticipating the next chord using the tenths. What you do is to go a half step above or below, and then you jump like that. And so on and so forth. Now, let's have a look at the third type, and this is now, instead of jumping back and forth all the time, what you can do is to play working tenths or other sustained notes, and this is now an element to break the pattern of the stride style. Here's one example. So now what I do, I play more sustain than I did before. And now let's move on and speak about how it looks like from the real book. So in the real book, it is written out pretty straightforward, like you can see on screen. And I have now arranged the left hand. This is one example of what you can do, right? So let's have a look at that in great detail. The first one is to jump from F minor 7. And now we are using element number 1. And then I've written B flat X diminished, and that means you can play the B flat diminished, right? using that voicing, where you just play 3 notes like this. But with all of the diminished 7th chords, you can play the related chords instead. So now you can play the B flat diminished, D flat diminished, E diminished, and G diminished, right? And that's what I've done in this arrangement. That's why I've written B flat X diminished. So that means now you can jump like this. And then we're using the B flat with F in the bass, like that. It's a B flat 7 basically. And then we are anticipating, so now we're using the second element, which is to play a 10th before the next chord. And now anticipating again. And using the third element, which is to play sustained notes. So my suggestion is that you get this PDF file and learn it for yourself, and then try to play this so it's going to happen automatically in your left hand. And once you have done that, you can have a look at the right hand, and let's now have a look at the right hand. And I suggest that you don't play as it's written in the real book, because in real book it's very straightforward. You can make it more exciting than that, I guess. So I would always tweak the rhythm and your phrasing, the way you play your phrasing. I'm going to show you some examples of that as well. Just a reminder, when I show you all of this now, remember the principle of going all in, right? So 2 things: you should play swing, as I showed you, and then you can play in octaves. This is pretty straightforward, and now I'm just playing the rhythm that's in real book as well. I'm going to show you more exciting rhythms soon. Now let's have a look at a very important exercise, which I find to be very useful. And this is an exercise of playing doublings. So if you play a chord, an E flat chord, and then you play it with doubling. So now you play it like this. And then you play a melody that goes like this. And you do that while you keep the rest of the chord like that. So now your second finger is going to stay on that G. And then you continue. Now the next one is just going to be the first inversion of that chord. So what you do now is to keep your second finger on the B flat. And so on and so forth. Once you've done this, it's very easy to play any tune with these kinds of voicings. And that's partly the secret of what you're doing with your right hand. You play these voicings a lot. So now let me show you how to utilize the principles. And I've written out the first couple of bars. So this is what it will sound like. The next thing you want to do is to tweak the rhythm. It's sounding a little bit boring, in at least my opinion, if you just play it as it's written in the real book. So it's important, I think, to stretch the rhythm. And here's one example of what that may sound like. Now let's speak about some effects that you can add when you play slow stride piano style. So the first effect is a little bit corny. That's why I have written it with a corn emoji here. Now it's important because we're going to roll out the chords, and I see a lot of my students, they're rolling out the chords by default, and I suggest that you don't do that. It sounds like this. And that's an effect that you can add. Normally you would play the chord like this, where all the notes are played simultaneously. It's cool to do that occasionally, but for now, when we're doing these exercises, I suggest that you do it all the time so that you're getting used to this effect. And that's why it sounds a little bit corny. So now it's going to sound like this. It sounds a little bit corny when you do it all the time, but this is a cool effect that you can add occasionally. That's what I suggest that you do. The next one is also a little bit corny, maybe even more corny. This is tremolo. So tremolo means that you are shaking like this. Again, this one can sound a little bit corny when you do it all the time, which I suggest that you do. Again, it sounds silly and stupid and everything, but maybe just corny. But it's a very useful thing to do. So try to do this all the time if you're going to learn this element. Let's have a look at the third element, which also is a little bit corny, because now you're going to play staccato. And as I said before, you should overdo whatever you're doing. That means try to play very staccato as you can. And so on and so forth. But it sounds cool to do this if you do it on purpose and you do it just occasionally. The fourth effect is not so corny. That's now where you're going to add chromatic notes. And when you're doing this, try to do it both with your right hand and your left hand. Now, let's speak about the fifth effect. So this is block chords as an effect. I made a video about how to play block chords, but you can use this as an effect. So what I would do is to try to play through the tune just using block chords. Let's have a look at the sixth effect. This is a blues line, and it's also pretty straightforward. So the blues line goes like this. But you also are adding the E flat on the top. And also you can slide between some of the notes. And the second blues line is not written out, but it goes like this. And the third blues line goes like this. You're just rolling back and forth like that. And when you're improvising, it's nice to play all of these blues lines. And you can get around by just playing the blues lines if you want. So let me try to do that. Let's speak about the seventh effect now. This is how to play glissando and glissandi. Glissandi is a plural of glissando, so what you do is to drag your finger. You can use any of them. I like to use the outside of my third or second finger. And drag your finger up like that, or descending. For that, I like to use my second finger. So what you can do is you can plan which note you're landing on. So if I want to play an F minor chord, I want to land on maybe the fifth note here. So now you try to aim for that particular note. In the context, this sounds pretty nice. Now I was aiming for the seventh of the E flat seventh chord. Now let's speak about the last effect, and this is to play arpeggios, and this is what I find to be a little bit hard, because if you're doing that on a consistent basis on all of the chords, it's going to be definitely a little bit challenging, because your left hand is going to jump back and forth and do the stride piano thing, while your right hand plays the arpeggios. So I would play like this. And then I would look for places to add arpeggios, for example here. You can just do like that. And maybe go descending here, if you can. And then it's a little bit hard to do, as I said. But I'm sure that you can work it out if you do it slow and not rushing through things like I did right now. Alright, so that was some effects that you can apply. Generally speaking, I would recommend that you try to be aware of how you play dynamically. Try to play from very, very soft to very, very loud and in between, and find your good spot for this tune. When you're improvising, try to vary how you play dynamically as well. That's it for this lesson. I hope you learned at least some new things. Remember to get the sheet for this little lesson. The link to that is down below. And also, if you enjoyed this tutorial, you can subscribe for more and hit the like button so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. And the fun fact I mentioned is this. When I played As Time Goes By for you, it looked like I played on a grand piano, but the truth is I did not. And I played on an incredibly rare electric piano. And at the time of this recording, there were only 30 piano units out in the world. So then we decided to make it look like it was an acoustic piano. When I discussed that with my assistant, we decided to try using a 3D model. It looks cool, and as I said to my assistant, we're only going to do that if we also tell the people that that's what we did. So there you go, it was only an illusion. And one more thing, I will make a review video about the electric piano very soon. Make sure you stay subscribed to this channel. That's all for now. Again, you can get the sheet music for this lesson down below. Remember to practice a lot, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.